Red Bulls, baby. Let's talk about it. Welcome in to the Red Bulls Review Podcast, the maiden voyage of a podcast that maybe should have started a week ago when they kicked off their season, or even a year ago when I intended to get it underway. I'm Adam Armbrecht. There'll be more about what this show is going to be and how we want to approach it along the way. Very briefly, if you follow me on Locked On Nets, if you follow me on One Giant Podcast, if maybe you even follow me on Devil's Puck Luck Podcast, you know that I have way too much probably on my plate. But what you maybe didn't know is that I'm a massive fan of the Red Bulls, a season ticket holder, played soccer growing up. My father, my brother, all played into college for my father. My brother, unfortunately, got hurt in his senior year of high school. That took him away a little bit. And I was somewhere in the mix. I played into high school, but let's not say it was the most successful of careers. The bottom line is that's why I'm here. That's why I'm excited for it. It's why I'll be out there at the Red Bulls home opener next Saturday night. Looking forward to covering this team all season long. And this is what we're going to do. Come in normally on a Sunday morning, today, later on a Sunday, just talk about what did we see on Saturday night? What did we like from this team? And how are we seeing some of the seeds of success getting planted here for this team that obviously wants to get itself back on track? We will touch on that Nashville matchup coming away with the 0-0 draw in the season opener on the road. But when you start the year, 2 games on the road, when you go to Houston, and when you find yourself down 1-0, really nice win for this team, 2-1, the ultimate tally here for the New York Red Bulls. And we know. So we're going to talk about the goals here, talk about some of the things that I think are signs of what could be a promising season ahead for this team. But we'll also note some of the areas that need to get cleaned up along the way. Obviously, Forsberg brought in here, right? He's trying to get himself into a rhythm, and you're seeing it week over week, I think, in these first 2 games. Expect, I think, maybe that he gets one in the back of the net at that home opener next weekend. But you also have Ella in the defensive pairing. You have Vanzeir in this game. You have Lewis Morgan making his appearance and his impact felt. You have the dynamic between not only Forsberg and Manuel, but also between Forsberg, Manuel, and also a player like Amaya. You have Tolkien returning in this game. So there's a lot of things at play inside of this one. And as we look over here, one of the other things we'll probably be adjusting is just the layout. There's the layout of what the show is going to look like. So bear with me on that side as well. But I didn't want to let another week go by without talking Red Bull soccer with everybody. You see, so we have a handful of the different stat lines up here coming out of this one. Whether it's the tackles, there was some chippiness as we got into the latter stages of this game. The interceptions are nice for the Red Bulls. We'll get into that a little bit more. Aerials, getting into those battles, obviously, whether it's in the middle of the field, some of those clearance balls and putting the pressure back on the opposition. Clearances played a big role in this one. Why? Because at the end of it, the Red Bulls are trying to hunker themselves down. They're trying to hold on to that 2-1 victory late here. Crosses, corners, touches, very much in favor of Houston in that regard. Again, some of these things start to get skewed when you're defending a lead and you're working your way through the latter stages. Last but not least, we had the goal kicks. Who cares about that? Some of these stat lines here. But throw-ins, long balls, the other one here too. Clearances factor into it. You have a team trying to come back in Houston, looking to get that job done there. Now, at the end of the day, in this game, let's start first and foremost with what we loved. Finally getting the first goal of the MLS season. And when you look back from a week prior, you saw that Manuel and Forsberg specifically were very close on a couple of those 2-man opportunities, just coming up short and putting some in the back of the net. Another set piece in this week that Forsberg can't convert, but it's not for a lack of being basically on the edge of clinical in both opportunities. That's why I'm pretty bullish on him being able to get across the line. This starts as both goals did. They go down early. They're trailing on a beautiful ball over the top from Houston. You take nothing away from them. We'll talk about defense on the back end of this. But in this game, 2 times, 2 turnovers. Second one, basically unforced. And actually, by the way, the Houston goal comes from an unforced turnover as well. Amaya on the ball in the final third, and just kind of little lackadaisical gets that one taken away from, I believe, Amaya. I'll have to double check the tape on that. May have been Vanzeir. I gotta confirm that because I don't want to wrongly put any onus on one player. But the second goal for Lewis Morgan is just a pass to his feet, so very easy to turn and get that one on net. For the first goal, though, I thought a really nice job from Lewis Morgan, who comes in because of the injury to Stroud, another thing that we're going to touch on. So forces the turnover, drops it off to Amaya to Forsberg. Forsberg changes field from about the 25-ish to the 18, finds Vanzeir, who I didn't think had a great game overall, but had a great moment, putting the absolutely perfectly weighted pass over the top. You get Manuel on that back post. The thing that you like about this tethering it back to week number one is you get some better components and pieces inside of this, obviously, in terms of the playmakers that are on the ball, but you also can see how this team can try to be successful going forward. Against Nashville, a lot of congestion in the final third there, having a hard time almost trying to overpass it in a handful of situations, and frankly, allowing the defense to get settled back in, right? When you look and see the sequence that you get on this first goal, not only because you put some pressure, you force a turnover, that's component number one, and you want to see the Red Bulls be able to do that and get on the front foot more often than not. But now the defense is a little bit out of position. Now they're scrambling a little bit. Rather than get bogged down and try to dribble into the action, you just see quick, decisive decisions. Amaya to Forsberg, Forsberg head up, switches fields, switches it immediately to the back post. So getting the defense shifting from one side to the other, especially coming off of a turnover, it's just one of those things that we didn't see nearly enough of a year ago. There's a lot of things we didn't see enough of a year ago, including goal scoring. But to be in a position where you have what is a high level talent in Forsberg and seems to have a command of it. So let's balance this out by thinking about last year and thinking about one player in particular in Frankie Amaya. I love Frankie Amaya. He is a guy that is going 1,000 miles an hour. He plays with like a desired reckless abandon. In the first game, I thought that he was a little bit too careless. I thought that he was playing a little bit too aggressively and not making the smart play, not making the right pass, going into traffic sometimes. Again, you want him to take on his defender. You want him to win those matchups. But now that you have a Forsberg, you need to start to play yourself within the system a bit more, because it doesn't need to be one man heroics. I think Manuel is going to be one of the biggest benefactors of getting Forsberg into this team, because he understands where to be positionally. He understands the physical size that he has there and how to just kind of bleed out to those back posts, make yourself available. He had opportunities in the first game as well against Nashville and just couldn't put them away. So this is the contrast and the dynamic shift that you need to see here when you talk about bringing a player like Forsberg, and then the expectations, right? I need this ball to be held up in order to be able to get the action here. In the second half of this game, even though Forsberg is out there on the left mid wing, you see him playing up underneath. You needed to find a way to get him onto the ball more frequently in the second 45 of this match, which they did. And you saw the benefits of that. So tactically, seeing some of these switches too here was really good, not only in game, but talking about week over week, right? Getting a sense of where you want your players to be, where you want teammates to be, and finding a way to have that success. So I clinical was that sequence. And guess what? We all know it. A year ago, you could not make that same claim for this team, not only on individual possessions, but week in and week out, right? Finding a way to have that type of success. Fast forward to the Lewis Morgan one. And this, man, I wish I had done the post game episode last week. If I was reviewing week number one, I would have said that Stroud was one of my kind of sore thumbs that stuck out. Just didn't seem like he really had his rhythm or his legs underneath him. Fast forward to this week, he has an aerial attack. He goes down below the shoulder. I thought for a minute it was completely dislocated on the field with the way that he was slumping it down. Ultimately, something there. He comes off, and what you end up having is Lewis Morgan steps in, and bang, the connectivity in that final third with Forsberg, with Manuel, with Morgan as well, with Vanzeir, like he started to get a little bit more activated inside of that. There is no denying that Morgan, if he's going to get back and healthy here, he needs to be the dynamic kind of, I think, connective tissue in a lot of these sequences that you can be seeing be a real benefactor. What that means for Stroud, I don't know. I'm just telling you what the eye test immediately recognized when he came into the game. Immediate impact player. He gets that easy, free one, right? 1-1, tie game, looking to put the team on the board again and go ahead. The pass is awful out of the back. That's fine. But he gets it, turns upfield, one touch, crack, upper 90 essentially, puts that one away. You need clinical finishers on this Red Bulls team, and you got that in Lewis Morgan in this game. So overall, loved it. Like, love to be on the road against Houston, finding a way to be down. Not a lot of times where you had those opportunities. More often than not, a year ago, what was it? Sometimes in those rare instances, 34 total goals a year ago, 34 total goals. How often was it about getting that first goal sometimes and then just letting the wave rush come back the other way? Or getting down and then just kind of saying, yes, this is going to be a game that goes in the wrong direction. So you like that sense of fortitude. And after the first goal, you saw Forsberg saying to everybody, hey, like, let's keep this going here. We got that at the end of the half, makes it a more interesting second half of action, but let's make sure that we keep the momentum going here. You need that type of leader inside of this team. I mentioned Amaya, obviously some things to work through here. We mentioned Tolkien coming back in this one. He had a difficult defensive assignment down that right wing as well. Getting into his rhythm. The difference that he brings to the table, as we all know, and why he's so critical, is you talk about set pieces now, right? Corners. Now you have Forsberg taking him from the left side. You have Tolkien from the right side. And there was a number of those corners that I think are fractions away from becoming real dynamic plays here for the Red Bulls over the course of this season. Not just because you have Manuel in the middle of that, but because, again, and we'll see this as the season progresses, can we see some short drop-off passes? Can we see Forsberg dropping down towards the top of the 18 and looking to string together short connective passes, get him into a space where he can get a one-touch and get his shot off? The control that Forsberg on ball provides you, set pieces and otherwise, because we've seen this now over the first two games. When those balls are played in over the top, he's looking to control it. He's looking to shield off defenders. He's not looking to go down for the easy fouls. When he does go down, you see him. He will get animated about it. But you need somebody that wants to hold up that play, distribute, look to get yourself into some actions here. So is this team perfectly constructed as we talk more defensively here? Maybe, maybe not. But the sample size with Tolkien now in his first game of the year starts to tell you now we're stacking players, right? Now we're talking about Forsberg, we're talking about Tolkien, we're talking about Amaya. Refine yourself a little bit. We know Manuel can be a clinical finisher for you around the goal, especially on aerial attacks. Vanzeir, right? Morgan. This dynamic collection of players can start to make a possession to possession a little bit more interesting. A season ago was a mess, right? No dynamic playmaking for the most part, no connective plays in terms of passing for the most part, and no sense of, if we need to possess this ball into the final third, how are we going to create openings and pockets for ourselves? The finishing was never quite clinical, even when those chances provided themselves, but it just didn't feel like you could play within traffic, play within congestion, in and out of congestion, create the space, find those crosses, and find those finishers around the net. So again, in this 2-1 game for me, loved what I saw and loved the fact that you get the victory and you can kind of now go game 1, game 2, okay, game 3, home opener. Can we piece all of this together? And what does that look like? That looks like being the first team to score in a game, right? It looks like putting away the opportunities early so the team has to chase you a little bit more, and then maybe give yourself the chance to go and get a 2-0 lead and really put pressure on the opposition. We'll talk about that game, though, when we get to it. I don't know if we're going to do previews as much as we might. We'll see how this kind of unfolds for us. But ultimately, next Sunday morning, hopefully we're talking about a home win, a home debut win for the Red Bulls. One other thing here, we'll just rotate through some of the stats in the background. Got to refine what this looks like here for us. Let's talk about one other element of this. So the Red Bulls had 5 shots on target, 12 shots in total. But here's the other big thing, and I think we're going to get there as we progress through this season as well. When we think about where this team was a year ago versus where it is going to hopefully be now, so there's a couple of things. First and foremost, again, now I've mentioned that I think we're going to be talking about players that'll be big beneficiaries of Forsberg here. He has 5 assisted passes so far over the course of this season, leading to shots, sometimes goals, or sometimes he gets the proverbial hockey assist where he's that first one, like it was on Manuel's goal, the first goal there on Saturday night. But right now, from a year ago, like, just remember that Elias had 3 goals a year ago. What are we talking about, man? If you had to set an over-under for him this season, I've got to have it at least at 6, and that even feels low to me as well. Remember, Fernandez gave you a team high 6. Amaya gave you 5 here. I'm very curious to see Amaya. We haven't seen this yet over the first 2 games either. He's been connecting with Forsberg, and then we've seen him also working off like the left side, coming down, working towards the corner of that 18, trying to put a little bit of pressure on, laying it off for outside for crosses, etc. But I'd like to see some 2-man game here where you get Amaya working into the box, getting up the middle of the field here, and with some smart connective passes, he could really find himself in the box with some danger areas and get some finishes in for himself as well. 5 goals for him a year ago. Let's bump that number up. The other big thing that we talk about in these first two games is connective passes. So Stroud from a year ago obviously was very strong. He was second on this team. No, he was first on this team, excuse me, because Mullings is going to be the first name there that only shows up in two games. It was in 25 games, 9 starts for him, 81%. You like that, but you need to find a way to have your passes be more clinical, because when we back this out and talk about from a league perspective, these are things that we're hoping change over the course of this season. And this is what we would have discussed coming out of this first game here, first game against Nashville, and then we would have continued to connect it as we worked our way through. So 1 year ago for the Red Bulls, we already know that they weren't a high scoring team. That's fine. But from a passing percentage, they were a league worst 72.1% behind St. Louis at 74. That's not something that you can sustain and be successful. Already over these first two games of this season now, though, we talk about a team that while it's not going to be perfect for them, the fact that we can look at the Red Bulls and see them dialing up, as I'll lose track of them. Of course I will. The Red Bulls are 81.2%, right? So you're right in the middle of the pack here in terms of the league through two games. That matters. You cannot be, again, right where you were a year ago. LAFC struggling in their two games, 72.5%, 75% for Portland, DC, 75%. St. Louis, the league worst a year ago, they're their fourth worst right now, 75.5%. You need to be able to connect your passes, especially when it comes from transitioning to defensive to offensive football, especially when it comes from gaining possession in the midfield and then converting it into real chances. A year ago, it was like a ping pong ball, man. We know, look around MLS, there was far more clinical football being played, far more beautiful football being played than we were seeing on a game in, game out, week over week basis for this New York Red Bulls team. Already you're seeing some of that look a little bit more successful, and I want to see that be more successful going forward. One other big thing for me too, we'll get into some attacking numbers here as well. Again, this season so far, the accurate lob balls that we're getting played forward here, the Red Bulls are going to do again in this second game a little more just clearance opportunities. They have 28 successful, by the way, accurate long balls. Kansas City has 68 right now. I mean, they are a machine in that category. But from a success percentage in terms of the long ball percentage that teams are playing, again, Red Bulls mid-table, 45.5%. Now, game script dictates a little bit of this, but I need to be able to have some of my defensive back four, like Tolkien. We saw this, by the way, from Ella as well, who actually took that ball and possessed it all the way up into the final quarter of the field, really. Whether or not that's always going to be the case, having that dynamic kind of matters. He's an enormous body. He can possess well, fellow Swede, obviously, with Forsberg there too. You need to have the ability to regain possession in your defensive end, get your head up, and find a way to get transition balls. We saw some nice switches here from midfield going to the 18, from left to right side, especially bringing that ball down comfortably and starting to get into the rhythm of the offense. These lob balls cannot be ambiguous. They need to be probing. Now that you feel like you have some dynamic, controlling playmakers at the front end of your roster, you need to find a way to get the ball at their feet and be able to take up 30, 40, 50 yards on a long ball pass and have it lead to a chance, have it lead to a defensive scramble. Never really happened a year ago. Certainly want to see those numbers roll over again. Defensively, the first two games have been interesting. I think we've had to rely on some smart plays and some smart clearances. There have been chances, though. And as the Red Bulls go up against some of the more clinical finishers around the MLS, you're going to be talking about, at least to me, I think, some chances here where we may see, right? 0-0 in the first game. Only one goal surrendered in the second one. Maybe there was a couple of good chances there. I think we can make the case in both weeks the Red Bulls could have scored more, just the two set pieces alone for Forsberg, but some other chances there too. So could we be talking about a 1-0 or a 2-1 victory in the opener? Certainly. Could we be talking about a 3-1 or a 4-2 game in the second one? Yeah, I really do think that we can. But until the offense pulls itself together and starts getting a little more successful on those opportunities, defensively need to tighten up. I wanted to look inside what we've seen through two games here. One other note on the offensive end, by the way, as well. So shots on target, we talk about this here. This is something that the opportunities have been there. 10 shots on target through the first two games, excuse me. That is a Nice total number, mid-table. But here's the problem. The shot total is at 29 right now. So you're still only 34%. League worst in terms of shots on target a year ago. So you're improving that category. But when we talk about improving that category, you're still going to find yourself close to mid-table, 34.5%, right? Philadelphia is just ahead of you there. They have 7 out of 20 on target. So we got to find a way to convert these. I'm not talking about getting goals. That part of it will come. But you need to be living far closer to top table here, where we have, it seemed like Charlotte, by the way, just 17 shots on target, 17 shots total, excuse me, but 11 on target. So, I mean, listen, either the shots go in and you start to get goals and you start to get wins, or it doesn't matter. But the higher your percentage you're putting them on the frame, the more likely it is that you're going to start to convert some of those chances. So want to see those be successful as well. Last but not least, let's just talk about through 2 games here, what we've seen from this Red Bulls team defensively. They're near top of the table in clearances. When we talk about aerial duel percentages as well, so getting those oncoming balls, are we able to defend and clear them away from our defensive area? Listen, they're winning them more often than not, nearly 57%. That puts them near the top 10 right now, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11th. So we're right on the outside of top 10. That's what you need, right? Some dominant play here. Didn't mention Reyes, by the way, who came in the latter stages of this game to provide some defensive security. Love him coming on. Like, I love having him as that weapon to come in, physical player, stabilizer, like being able to bring him in off the bench. So you're winning those attacks here. And we'll take actually a quick look here, by the way, too, because it's one that I didn't. I want to check the aerial duels from a year ago. Red Bulls were decent at it. They were still better than 50-50, and that was good for ultimately by the end of the season finishing top 10. 6, 8, or 12, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11. So they were 11 a year ago. Maybe they're going to be 11th again this year. Those percentages, league leading was DC United 62.5%, Red Bulls 50.8. So, you know what you're talking about here. The margins are not insane, but Cincinnati FC 57%, 54 for Atlanta, LAFC converting on better than 53% of theirs. So you always want to be on the right side of it. And by winning a little bit more than 50%, you're going to find yourself in the top half of the league. By winning more than 50% of those aerial attacks, you're going to get rid of and push aside some of those offensive chances for the opposition. So there are things to like here. And I feel like I needed to do that first week's episode, not only so I could continue to have a good rhythm here, but also because I needed to make sure that I didn't get over my skis with excitement and get a little bit too verbose and start to dial myself up to nearly 1,000, which I feel like I have in this one. Here's why. The Red Bulls a year ago, as we know, were not a particularly good team. Now, they still got themselves across the finish line. They still, we still saw them make the playoffs, but it's not making the playoffs in the way that we want them to, right? Being really dynamic and being really dangerous. When we backed this thing up a year ago, and you think about the best teams in the league from a record standpoint, from a point standpoint, right? Cincinnati FC, 69 points, 63 for Orlando, 57 for Columbus, 55 for Philadelphia, 43 points, and only averaging, by the way, 1.26 goals a year ago, which, as we know, they're averaging 1 right now through 2 games. But the best teams in the league are pushing towards that 2 goal, right? Have to find a way to be in that upper echelon of the league in that regard. For all the defense that you want to go ahead and try to anchor yourself in, we saw it a year ago. So much time was spent trying to fend it off and hoping you got that somewhat lucky odd man rush, that long ball that got run onto, right? You need to find a way to be possession by possession more clinical if you want to have long-term success over the course of the season. We talk about goals for a year ago. The Red Bulls, as I flip the script there on myself, the Red Bulls with 36. Okay, listen, Eastern Conference, that's 8th. Well, that doesn't feel terrible. Goals against 39, though. And again, you have 1, 2. Oh, sorry. Yeah, this didn't even go. Excuse me. I knew that couldn't have been accurate. You're talking about being 36 goals is going to be tied for 4th worst in the Eastern Conference, right? There with Montreal, New York FC, and then Toronto at the bottom of the table. And wouldn't you know it, all these teams are basically 34, 40 points on the season. That's what we're talking about when we look at where the Red Bulls were. So at some point, the goals against, yeah, of course, we love the fact that they were third best in goals against with 39, but you were -3, right? You're scoring 50 plus goals. And by the way, goals against that really mattered here. Yeah, Orlando 55 to 39, right? That's the type of goal differential ratio you want here. 16. They were third best in that category in the Eastern Conference. 18 for Cincinnati FC. Let me make sure I get that dialed up here. 18 for that was second best. Columbus Crew. Columbus Crew. Wouldn't you know it? How that season end for them? 21 on their goal differential. You only have now 7 teams that were plus in that category in the Eastern Conference. And the Red Bulls were there at 8. But that's kind of the difference of being successful, of making the playoffs and being a dangerous, dynamic team. Overall, as we know as well, the last thing that I'll mention here, Red Bulls, when we talk about that home record, 7-5-5, 4-8-5 away from Red Bulls Arena. So here's the positive. Red Bulls Arena, man, even though some crowds were bigger than others, they played well at home. They had a winning record at home. So how do you start to pull some of those back here? Even if, how do you start to pull some of those games back there when we talk about away from the arena, string together some better victories there, draws, convert some of those draws into ties, and we start to have a different type of conversation about where this season was a year ago. 3 points matters so much more, especially if you think that they are games that you can go out, that you can win, and that you can start to position yourself better early in the season. It was a long road early last year. Coach fired, interim head coach, changes made, guys in and out of the lineup. Like, we understand, but this is a new season. This is 2024 now, and this team needs to find a way to be dynamic right out of the gate. And that's what we're hoping that they can do. Miami, by the way, Inter Miami, 7 points, just 3 games played. They're 2-0-1 already on their season. Why not? Who they just thrash? My God, they thrashed them. I'll come back in next week and we'll highlight around the league a little bit as well when we have these conversations. So, end of the day, 1-0-1 on the season, already finding 4 points for yourself. That feels really great. Getting points every week feels really great, especially early days here. We will continue on. Coming back next week, we will talk about the schedule and where they stand, see how they perform in their home opener against FC Dallas. The week following, Columbus Crew is going to be a part of this one. That's actually going to be another away game, though. And then back at home, talking about Inter Miami and Messi coming to town. That should be an interesting one. If you're going to be at any of these games, if you start to follow me, start to listen to the episodes, start to watch the episodes, go ahead, give me a shout out, man. I'm in my section. You can come and see me and wave and hoo-ha, and then we can all have a really good time. Looking forward to it. Cannot wait to get out there for this one. Hey, at the end of the day, my friends, this was hopefully a good maiden voyage for this. I have a lot of energy that I need to dial in around this team. There's going to be a lot of narratives that I think are going to be a lot of fun to watch throughout this year. Forsberg is going to be that guy for us. You can see it coming here. We may look back and talk about him being one of the more dynamic assist men on this team. That was Tolkien's title a year ago. I can start to see the table setting open up here, and a lot of opportunities for a lot of players. When you go back and look at their stats from a year ago, they're going to take that little bump. They're going to take that little bump because not only do I think you have better on ball here now with Forsberg as the centerpiece of this team, but I also think that confidence breeds confidence, and that breeds success, and you start to build on it, right? So you come out of these first 2 games with still areas that you want to clean up and you want to get better at, but you come out with a draw in the opener on the road. You come out with a win on the road in game number 2. Now you bring that back home. You look to be dynamic against FC Dallas in your home opener, and momentum starts to build here. I think a year ago, this team struggled to have that identity, to have that sense of who they were, and even in knowing sometimes who they were, feel like you could win by playing to that core identity. So, new year, new Red Bulls, new me. Go ahead and follow us here at NYRB Pod on Twitter. You can get us over on YouTube as well. These episodes will be going up. You can get us on your podcast feeds at Red Bull Review Pod. You can, wherever, social media. That's the deal here. Hopefully you enjoy it. Hopefully you support us every single week. Red Bulls Review coming at you the morning after most games, sometimes late afternoon, depending on the way my Sundays kick off. Really appreciate it, everybody. Let's have some fun. Let's chop it up. Get after me with your questions, your comments, the narratives that you're most excited about. And let's have some fun talking Red Bull soccer. And let's also find a sign off for me, because clearly we're draining down here as we try to get out the door. We will see you following the FC Dallas, hopefully home win premiere for the Red Bulls in 2024. We will catch you guys next time.